On today's show, the San Diego Padres, man, oh man, AJ Preller, slice me in half like you're playing Fruit Ninja. They once again go off on the trade deadline, and I'm joined by Jake Garegnani of CBS 8 Sports to talk about all the rest of the trades for what was one of the low-key better trade deadlines in a long time.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, August 1st. Yes, years going by fast. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for almost 6 years now for not just this podcast, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. Only valid through September 30th. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. And go check that out. And also go check me out on the socials at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO on Twitter/X and Blue Sky. And as well as my guest for today's fun Friday, it's my man Jake Garegnani from CBS 8 Sports. We had Karthik on Tuesday's episode. We've got Jake on for the full recap of all the madness that went down. We're going to be getting into his thoughts on the Mason Miller trade. We got the Nestor Cortez trade. We've got the Ramon Loriano O'Hearn trade. We've got another one that I can't name right now. All sorts of crazy stuff popping off, man. AJ Preller, man. It first started, Jake, that I used to just beg him to kill me on Twitter. This used to be a thing where I would just increasingly crazier ways ask for him to destroy me, right? I've talked about, Godzilla's breath and then let the Death Star blow me apart, like all these things for every trade that he makes. And yesterday I did one real quick over it, but what a deadline, man. I mean, truly. I think that this was what's interesting, just generally speaking. I don't think this was a deadline that was expected to be crazy. And I think it's interesting that the craziest moves didn't necessarily happen, right? Luis Robert didn't get moved. Jaron Durant didn't get moved. Sandy Alcantara didn't get moved. Like some of the Joe Ryan, we thought was moved for a second. Shout out Yahoo Sports. They messed up there, right? We had a lot of those are the big names. So if you told people 2 weeks ago, those guys will not be traded, they probably would have been like, oh, it's going to be a little bit of a quiet deadline. Nope, it was not. And a big part of that is the San Diego Padres. And as June Lee, who I love, everybody go check out his work on Twitter, was like, AJ Preller doesn't always make the smartest long-term moves, but he always builds the Padres like the world is ending tomorrow, makes the trade deadline and the offseason wildly entertaining every year without fail. Jake, man, what was kind of your mindset? How were you coping with the madness yesterday? Were you in studio on air when something broke? What was it like for you, man?
Yeah, it was a lot for me yesterday, like it was a lot of Padre fans, and I was in studio. I was on air for some of it when it broke. We were live on air when the Nestor Cortez deal broke. But honestly, Javi, I think the biggest takeaway from yesterday, if I could just put it in a cute little bow, is that I thought AJ Preller put on a masterclass, my friend. I really did. I think he addressed every single need that this Padre team had going into the deadline and did it brilliantly. I really believe that. And I know there are a ton of Padre fans divided based on the amount of prospects that got shipped out, the amount of players that were moved, and the returns. But I thought everybody that he got really was the exact need for this team. And everyone's going to talk about, oh, what about the future? Oh, he mortgaged the future. Oh, this and that. Look, I've said it over and over. Prospects are prospects until proven otherwise. And how many times have we seen a guy just not work out? And I am not a prospect hugger. I am not a guy that says, oh, let's wait a long time and see how this guy turns out, especially, Javi, when you consider the roster that the San Diego Padres currently have, the contracts that are given out between the Manny Machados and the Xander Bogaerts and the Yu Darvishes. The time to win is right now. You have to take advantage of those windows. He's a guy who has proven over and over again he knows how to restock that farm system. He will do it again. I'm just not understanding, in my opinion, the hate for after the Mason Miller trade, all of social media was ready to fire AJ Preller instantly because of Leo Dallas DeVries, right? And it's like none of that really made a whole lot of sense to me because he made this team so much better. This went from a fringe playoff team to an absolute World Series contender overnight because of what AJ Preller did. If you're a fan, what else could you possibly ask for, in my opinion?
See, this is great. This is why I like having you on, because I do have slight disagreements, but only
Okay.
slight. And I think it depends, particularly around the Mason Miller trade. But first, speaking of Mason Miller trade, I want to just recap really quickly everything that happened, right? So in total, the Padres brought in relief pitcher Mason Miller, left-handed pitcher JP Sears, catcher Freddie Fermin, Ryan O'Hearn in the outfield / DH, Ramon Loriano in the outfield, infielder Will Wagner, left-handed pitcher Nestor Cortez, and shortstop Jorge Quintana, which I believe was optioned the other day to the minor leagues, AAA El Paso, I believe. And then out, in terms of everything they lost Ryan Berger, Stephen Kolek. The Kolek kingdom has come to an end, my friends. Brendan Lockridge, prospect Leo DeVries, Braden Nett, Henry Baez, Eduardo Nunez, Boston Bateman, Brandon Butterworth, Cobb Hightower, Victor Figueroa, Tyson Neighbors, friend of the show, Tanner Smith, and Brandon Valenzuela. My God, just from a sheer volume standpoint, I don't think people understand like how crazy it is to even be prepared to do stuff like that. I'm not talking about like what you gave up. I'm just saying that's a lot of assets you're moving around. So if you're part of the opinion that AJ Preller doesn't sleep, you were probably vindicated yesterday, because this man he was on one, right? He was on one. I want to ask for your thoughts specifically on the Mason Miller trade. The only thing that I will add that I think is interesting, that I just thought of actually, we were recording. Reportedly, the Cleveland Guardians wanted Leo for Stephen Kwan, who did not get traded. That's another big name that didn't get moved. And I think that what's interesting about that is I think it fuels my hope that Mason Miller could be a starter next year, because I don't believe it makes sense to trade an 18-year-old super top tier prospect for just a reliever. I don't care how many years of control he has. It's great, but when you already have a good bullpen, it's questionable. So that makes me wonder, did he decide I prefer a Avengers bullpen this year with the possibility of Mason Miller being a great starter, that he's confident Mason Miller could do that? He did come up as a starter instead of Stephen Kwan, the left fielder, right? Like, I think it's actually the fact that apparently he wasn't willing to give up Leo for Kwan and a reliever tells me there's a good chance that Mason Miller is going to be a starting pitcher at some point.
Yeah, and he was asked about that yesterday on his press conference after the trade deadline, and he didn't shy away from saying that it's definitely a possibility. But I think there's a multitude of things to look at, Javi, when you think about the Mason Miller deal. First of all, he's not just a reliever. I think that's very important to keep in mind, that he is a generational talent when it comes to an arm coming out of the bullpen. Second of all, to really bolster your strengths like the Padres just did, changes everything. Anyone that watches baseball, you, me, and anyone under the sun that is a fan of baseball knows that winning in October and to have a bullpen like the Padres now have changes the entire game. I mean, you can shorten baseball games so much when you have those 5 dudes coming out of a bullpen. And so I think when you look at how much AJ Preller getting Mason Miller shortens baseball games, to me, that's a huge thing. And then, yes, the absolute possibility of Mason Miller going back to a starter is interesting. And look, they got to test it out. Nobody knows. I mean, this is a guy who throws 104 out of the pen. You turn him into a starter. Obviously, you're not going to ask him to go full velo all the time. There's going to be a bunch of changes. Do you move a generational arm like that into a starting role? That's kind of a question for next year. But I think for now, like the move to go get him, when you talk about in your example and one that was talked about a lot with like Stephen Kwan, is like, yes, Stephen Kwan plays every day. Yes, he hits the ball really well. But like when you look at what this team needed and the value that they got, I think the Mason Miller deal would have been better than the Stephen Kwan deal, considering the overall picture of the deadline. I just think that when we get into playoff baseball and we get into close games, and the Padres have played 1 billion of them this year, and you have those 5 guys in the bullpen, you're going to get a whole lot more victories than a Stephen Kwan, in my opinion. So I honestly liked the Mason Miller deal more if you did the same thing for Stephen Kwan. And then the guy that's going to get forgot about in all this is JP Sears, which I'm sure, and I know you talked a lot about him yesterday in your pod yesterday, but like, that was a pretty great get that I think people are also just going to gloss over because of Mason Miller. But to answer your question,
Martin Perez.
Yeah, exactly. But to answer your question, I think Mason Miller is a generational arm, a proven arm at the big leagues. And I go back to saying, yes, Leo Dallas DeVries could be a really, really, really good baseball player. Could be. Mason Miller is a really, really good baseball player. The Padres' time to win is right now. And by the way, AJ Preller has found shortstops over the course of his career. There's a
He
couple
has.
that I know of in Fernando Tatis Jr. and Jackson Merrill and CJ Abrams and so on and so forth. He'll find another, I promise.
Absolutely, man. And we're going to talk about more trades that the Padres made, not just Mason Miller, but everybody go check out my episode breaking that down in further detail because, man, Jake, we got a lot of trades to go through.
Yeah.
So don't go anywhere. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. And that sponsor, folks, let me tell you, it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your time would be a heck of a flavor, though. Lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're seeking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5, literal number 5, hourenergy.com. You use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. And just like that, everybody, we are blasting into segment number 2 with my man Jake Garegnani of CBS 8 Sports. We just got his thoughts on the Mason Miller. He said, all of you little weak cowards scared about prospects. I don't want to hear it. Let's talk about some other trades, though, that they made. I do think that JP Sears is a decent ad that was worth mentioning, though. But probably the other biggest trade, I would say, if I had to run it down, is the Padres getting infielder/outfielder Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Loriano in exchange for Boston Bateman, the Padres' number 6 prospect, Kai Hightower, the Padres' number 8 prospect, Tyson Ambers, friend of the show, number 16 prospect, infielder Brandon Butterworth, infielder outfielder Victor Figueroa, and right-handed pitcher Tanner Smith. Wow. So Mason Miller was a stunner, right? Because it was a player that they didn't on paper need. They have the best bullpen in baseball by ERA standards, the 4 horsemen, blah, 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 blah. But this is kind of what the Padres needed exactly. But unlike a Steven Kwan, these are still rentals, so it's worth talking about it from that perspective. But both of these guys, I almost don't even care who it was to fix the catching situation for the Padres, because Ramon Loriano this year, I think he's actually an intriguing player because he was really highly regarded at one point, particularly early on in his career. And he's kind of been a journeyman since then, right? Like bouncing around, going from here to here, Oakland and all that sort of stuff. It didn't really work, right? But he's kind of staying in Major League Baseball because he just plays a solid outfield. And this year, he's been fantastic. 144 WRC plus. He's batting .290. He's got 15 home runs in 82 games. He's been playing some pretty good defense. He's worth 2.3 runs above replacement. That is a very good player, even if it is just at a rental level. And Ryan O'Hearn is having a career year, right? Like, this is a guy who, if you need power, which is something that the Padres have lacked, that's kind of what he can provide, right? He's got 283 average, 374 on base. He's slugging 463, 134 WRC plus. He's having a career year. And even before this year, in fairness, if people are worried, because there's been some players that the Padres have traded before that are having like career great years. Josh Bell, Brandon Drury, Adam Frazier. He has been pretty solid the years before this. 117 WRC plus in both the last 2 seasons. So like maybe he's overperforming a tiny bit, just a tiny bit, but even if he is, clearly seems like a very good batter to add to this lineup. So Jake, what did you think about all this?
Almost exactly what you led with, that this was the move the Padres needed to make, and AJ made it, and it was a really, really solid move. And honestly, O'Hearn's the only true rental. Like Laureano, they got 1 extra year of control next year, right?
Okay.
And so there's an option there. And the thing is that, one, everyone's talking about needing that outfielder, and you got it in Ramon. And the beauty, we talk about where Gavin Sheets may fit into this. Well, now you have a guy that can platoon. You have a guy that now Gavin doesn't have to face lefties all the time. Now, Gavin can come in when they need him. Gavin can be that big bat off the bench. It really what this move did, including the Fermin move, which we'll get into, but really what this move did is lengthen that lineup so much, Javi.
Yeah.
The fact that now there is not just a black hole in that lineup, and now that you have bench options, no longer do you have to pinch hit Trenton Brooks for Martin Maldonado, who shout out to both those guys who got DFA'd. But no longer is that a thing anymore, right? Like you have much better depth when it comes to offense, and really O'Hearn too, I think is going to play a lot of first and DH in this situation for the Padres. Like both of those bats, I think were great gets for the Padres and must gets.
Yeah. Mike Schilt, the way he manages this is going to be really fun, I think, because there are some days where I'm like, man, Luis Ariz, first base is not your position. You know what I mean? But I get why they put him there. I've talked about this on my show. I feel like if you're going to have a defender who isn't very good defensively, plug him at first base. That's the one that seems to matter the least. Not matter the least of the rest of the positions. So I'm okay with it. I'm just saying it's funny. I think it could be a lot of fun. I think that you're right. I think this has been a big thing for the Padres is the platoon. Gavin Sheets, not as much of a liability against lefties this year, right? 90 WRC plus, so not good, but not a liability. He has a career 50, which means he's 50% worse than regular an average batter against lefties. He's been a little bit better there. But what have we also seen? In general, he has been struggling, with the exception of that home run that he hit the other day. He has been struggling a little bit, and for a guy who before this year was not very good. Like he wasn't really a productive player. Maybe the Padres said we shouldn't like lock in and assume that what he did in the first half and was done this year is going to stay. Instead, let's make it that now it's even lower bar that they need for him. We just need you to come up in certain games and be great, be a nice, good player for this team. And he has been for most of this year. I think my thoughts on this, I forgot that Laureano had an extra year of control. I think that completely changes my mind on this. In terms of, I was pro this trade. I thought it made sense. They gave up a lot of prospects, but to me, I think it's just so important to remember, like what you said, which is that they keep coming back to them. They keep finding them. I think AJ Preller is just one of the game's most gifted scouts. I think everyone's talked about this. I think it means something heading into negotiations why he's more willing to trade guys. He's like, whatever. I'll go find some high school with my binoculars again. I'll find some superstar stud. And for everyone who keeps saying win now, I disagree a little bit because I've been hearing that since 2019 or 2020, I should say. And my thing is, it's been 5 years. So are we sure it's as it is? Are we sure the Padres are so like they're screwed in the future as everybody makes it out to be? I'm not entirely sure of that. And more importantly, I remember last year with the Taylor Scott trade, they were like, all right, how did they even pull this off? This year, we had less prospects and still made trades. So I think that gets overstated a little bit. And it's just more that AJ Preller is willing to trade and is willing to go for it as opposed to some other teams.
Well, and I think, Javi, too, like the big thing is it can be both things. Like Padres can be in win now mode, why he restocks. And people who I saw this argument a bunch. Well, what if the Padres won, making all these trades? What have they done with the Soto stuff? And the thing is, like, baseball's really hard. You can't ever promise yourself a World Series. The Dodgers have proven that. They've tried to promise themselves a World Series years in and years out. What you can do is put your team in the best possible position to win a World Series, which AJ Preller has done over and over and over again. I mean, honestly, look at last year. Everyone said there was one team that could beat the Dodgers. We all know who it is. Yeah. The years past, the Padres have gone to NLCSs. Every single year when Preller has gone all nuclear and made all these moves, he's put the Padres in a great position to possibly win a World Series. That is all you can ask for a fan. That's all you can possibly do as a general manager, is put your team in a position to win a World Series. That's exactly what he did at this deadline by making all these moves. So I think the idea that, you saw Padres Twitter literally melt down yesterday, and it was the funniest thing
myself
in the world.
Included a little bit too.
But the idea that everyone said he needed to be fired, and if the Padres don't win a World Series, it's a complete failure. That could not be further from the truth, because he put the team in position to win a World Series. Now, again, baseball's really hard. I don't know if they're going to win it or not, but at least they have a fighter's chance, and a really good chance at this point.
Bro, Padres Twitter has gone back and forth on AJ Preller more times than I've gone back and forth on like certain Marvel movies and whatnot. Like, it's insane. It's so funny. I was just more like, wow, this is crazy. I still thought they were going to fix it, but I think the extra year of control. And by the way, if Laureano regresses to being a 100 average player, here's the big thing. Maybe they didn't need a Steven Kwan. They just needed a good catcher, someone who is serviceable, because the gap between serviceable and what they were dealing with, no offense, I know Bryce Johnson had been playing a little bit better, by the way, but This year, the worst OPS at left field, second worst OPS for left fielders, and worst OPS for catchers. I like that. And we're going to talk about that other catcher that they did acquire, my man, the Ferminator, in just a second, guys. But first, one more break from our sponsors. And folks, that sponsor is our friends at The Hue. Let me tell you guys, today's episode is brought to you by Game Day Hue, and that is what we are going to talk about. I do not have the equipment just yet, but let me tell you, Game Day Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between, right? Wherever you want to go. Tailgates, tee times, just running errands. That's what I'm most fan of, right? I love when I get to represent my team or have some passion for the mundane of life, right? This is why I don't like jerseys as much as I like fun shirts, because you don't really wear a jersey to, everywhere. It's like that you wear that to a tailgate and to friends. That's why I like my Game Day Hue for every situation. They are great. And it's not just the hats. Check out their split shade gloves made for the golf course, or the perfect gift for the fan who has everything. Right now, you can get 50% off with code MLB15 at Game Day Hue. That's Game Day Hue, HUE.com. The code even stacks unbundled deals, so now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com, code MLB15. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we're back into the final segment. We've been talking a lot, and it's hard. We're going to need multiple episodes to go over all this stuff, frankly, man. I'm going to have Jake on next week. But the last other trade to talk about, the last big trade, I would say, is Freddie Fermin from the Kansas City Royals in exchange for Stephen Kolek and Ryan Berger. This one made me sad, not because I thought it was bad, but I was just like, I really liked what the Padres had been doing with their fifth starter this year. And I understand that they did get it back, right? Which is, by the way, we haven't talked about it yet. Dylan Cease not getting traded was also one of the biggest things that happened yesterday. But I was just like, oh, I love the Kolek Kingdom, and I like Ryan Berger and whatnot. These aren't guys that you're going to be like, oh my God, we just gave away Mackenzie Gore again. It's not that, but you did give up some really nice depth pieces to help you get through a season, in exchange for something that you needed more, though. And they did get JP Sears back. They did get Nestor Cortez back. So don't get me wrong, they did get some stuff. But overall, Freddie Fermin, kind of, in my opinion, I would comp this to a Kyle Higashioka, except with more years of control. Has just been a solid guy behind the plate. He's learned potentially from Salvador Perez, hopefully not from the defensive side of things. Low-key, Salvador Perez, not a good defender. But what I see here is no more Marty Maldonado. Instead, Fermin should probably be the primary catcher. And they didn't give up Ethan Salas, so maybe this is just going to be their plan until Ethan Salas is ready. 255 hitter this year, plays good defense, and maybe has room to get better. What do you think, Jake?
Instant upgrade offensively, instant upgrade defensively behind the plate, a move that absolutely had to be made, and people quickly found out what the price of the catcher market was, which is a high price, as it always is, to find good catchers. I mean, this is a guy who, between both the catchers this season, it's been a negative WAR for the Padres. This is a guy who's had a plus WAR this season. He's got a career WAR near 6. He's just going to be really solid. The Higashioka comp is a good comp because you're just going to get consistent, solid play. And again, I brought it up when we talked about the Orioles trade, but there is just no longer, and I know the two catchers had made some nice, moments the last few weeks, but it's been a black hole all season long. That black hole will not be there anymore. It was a move that had to be made, absolutely had to be made. AJ Preller did a good job with it, with a solid catcher. That's going to be, I think, a game changer, both defensively and offensively, in the sense of an 8-9 spot in your lineup, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, gave up a couple arms that I think Padre fans came to like. The Berger one had a lot of upside, of course. 25-year-old throwing in the mid-90s who had some really good starts for the Padres.
Good fastball.
Yeah, sometimes you got to break an egg to make an omelet, and that's kind of that situation here. I thought Kolek did a good job of stretching out this season and threw the ball well a couple of times. I really like to start in Colorado. But again, I just think, like, let me ask you this question, Javi. Of every single piece that AJ Preller gave up, which one of them would have played the biggest role or any role in a postseason roster for the Padres?
I would assume probably like one of these two pitchers, only because it's possible that just something goes wrong with the back end of a starter and then they have to bring in some guys, right? They do a bullpen day. But other than that, it's a good point, right? I mean, these are not guys that we know for sure are going to be great. I think the bigger thing about this is depth pieces for a season run. And AJ Preller probably feels confident that we're at least making the playoffs. So in that case, I get it. Look, man, my only thing is, are we sure Freddie Fermin is going to be good? Right? And he's going to be better, but are we sure he's going to be good? And that is going to be the big question for this team. Does he see something in him? Or was it like, dang, not going to lie, they kind of got me behind the 8 ball. I just need to get a catcher. So I will pay a little bit more than probably what Freddie Fermin could be worth potentially. I'm curious to see how that goes. I really am. But I think it's very interesting. Right when I saw this trade, I was like, Salas is gone. That's what's going to happen. They did not trade Ethan Salas. So I like the idea that they're like, this will be our guy. Maybe Campisano makes a cameo at some point, right? And then you have Elias Diaz, all that stuff. But for now, this gives me hope that they're saying, you know what? If we really want to have the catcher, it's worth taking a chance and waiting on someone like Ethan Salas, where in fairness, Leo DeVries doesn't immediately have a spot to play because of Xander, because of Jake Cronenworth, right? With all the rest of the roster kind of figured out in terms of infield, right? Not immediately there. When Ethan Salas is ready, he will be playing, right? There's no doubt about that. There's not going to be anyone really blocking him probably. So I think that's interesting. But last thing before we get you out of here, Jake, Dylan Cease, not traded. It was rumored heavy. I got reports that said he's probably getting moved. According to Bob Nightingale, though, the Padres, who were talking to the Astros about starter Dylan Cease, as the deadline expired, were asking for starter Spencer Arrighetti and 3 prospects in return. The Astros declined. That's a big price to pay for half a season of Dylan Cease. And that brings me to pat myself on the back a tiny bit. I never, ever really thought Dylan Cease was getting traded. I thought that bottom line is he's a starter to get you through the end of the season, especially since they gave up Bergen and Kolek. I think he's just dangling him and seeing if someone frankly pulls at him and is like, fine, we'll give up everything for this guy. I think that's what he was doing in the offseason with Baltimore. I think he was trying to get one of those top young guys that they have over there in exchange for Dylan Cease, considering that the Orioles decided that having no starting pitching was smart for some reason. But I think that's what it was. I think he was in rumors just because he was dangling him, seeing if someone paid a really big price and give them a lot of depth pieces for a guy that's probably not coming back. I think. Probably. But who knows anymore, right? But given that he's a Boris client and all that. But what did you think about Dylan Cease staying as a Padre? Because I personally like it. But man, I need him to get better, man. Please, we know he can. That's the frustrating part.
Yeah, I think it was handled well. I think the Padres do believe that Dylan Cease will be good down the stretch, or at least get better down the stretch. And I think AJ said, look, if somebody, like you mentioned, is going to give me the Godfather offer on Dylan Cease, just an offer I can't refuse, then we will pull the trigger. Okay, worst case scenario, we have what we believe is going to be a dominant righty the rest of the way. And then, like you said, right after the Fermin trade, I think it was like, it's got to be a really, really good deal for me to give up Dylan Cease, because now we need that starting pitching depth. And they have it. When you look at the starting rotation, man, it's pretty good in the sense of Nick Pivetta, Yu Darvish, Dylan Cease, Randy Vasquez, who, by the way, only needs to throw 4 innings now because of this bullpen. Yeah. So we're set there, right? And then Sears and Nestor Cortez in there. Like, that's a pretty good starting rotation. And then, by the way, Michael King's making a rehab start here. So now you got a little bit of house money to play with. I just, again, I said at the beginning of our episode, and I'll say it again here, I felt like it was a masterclass from AJ Preller to get the pieces that he did. Now, does it all pan out? We'll find out over the next 50 plus games going into the postseason. But I just think for every issue this team had, it was addressed. This team got a whole lot better because of what happened over the deadline. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, how could we wait and trade all these prospects away and completely deplete the farm, because it's just such an unproven thing. And I mean, look at teams that have hugged on to prospects, right? Look at where the Orioles are at right now. I mean, it's just like there's so many teams that feel that they cannot move these top prospects, and it really hasn't panned out the more you look into it. I just think it's go get great baseball players, and that's what he did.
I get it, man. I'm going to conclude with my little bit of a devil's advocate position, which is, I think that for me, prospects aren't about me saying, I think the player's going to be great. Has been that way for a long time. For me, it's about asset management. And for me, I worry, not that I think this is awful. AJ Preller's not a bad GM. He can't be, right? Especially because, by the way, at the very minimum, this has made the Padres a cultural phenomenon in baseball, right? Where like they sell out random Tuesday night games against the White Sox, right? Like I was literally at one of the games they were sold out on a Monday night, right? I think that just giving up that tier of prospect. Not because I think he's the next Lindor, but just because, am I sure I want to give it up for a guy who pitches 1 inning? We will have to see if he is a starter, though, and we will have to see how this works out. But overall, I think my other counter to my counter would be the number one thing, Jake. I don't want to see fan bases talking anything, particularly because, look, let me be clear. One of the reasons I worry is because I like having a balance. I like having flexibility. When you give up all your assets to be able to improve the team, what happens next year if they need some changes? That's what I worry about. And I worry about it for a team that's basically had 2 really good seasons in 11 years, one of which was a 2022 playoff run, which, you just had a really good run and you beat the Mets and the Dodgers. And then last year, where you were one of the best teams of baseball. I counter to that is I don't want to hear teams, smaller market teams, that never do anything coming after the Padres. I saw the Brewers fans yesterday. I got breaking news for Brewers fans. You're losing in the first round. How do I know that? Because the past 32 seasons, only 3 teams have won the World Series that were outside the top half of payroll. And only one of those teams was truly out there. They were 25th or so, and that was the 2003 Miami Marlins. Right? Most of the time, you lose. And I think we should use this as a stat when analyzing playoff teams. I really do. I've been vocal about this for years. I think it's absolutely worth mentioning that if you are not spending, history says you will not win. So I don't want to hear it from those people. You are doing ownership a favor. Unfortunately, the other teams that actually do spend money, maybe they could talk a little bit of smack, but those lower, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, all those type of teams, I don't want to hear it. Because at least we try. And by the way, Milwaukee, when were they last in the World Series, Jake? Do you know when that was?
I guess it's sometime in the 80s, but I don't know off the top of my head.
1982. When was the last time the Padres were? 98 and 84. So literally doing better than the team that allegedly knows what they're doing. They do know what they're doing. I feel bad for that front office. Their ownership just doesn't care, and they're never going to win. But all in all, man, what a crazy deadline, right? Like genuinely crazy. He never ceases to amaze me. I have a lot of questions, but as you said, every need was addressed. So at least if you were going to go all out, it was to get better relief pitching with the upside of another starter. Remember, this is a team that doesn't have King or Cease under control, and Tommy John surgery for Joe Musgrove. He's coming off of it. So maybe planning a little bit for the future there. Then you figured out left field for at least another year, and you've got another great bat in Ryan O'Hearn. And JP Sears, right? We didn't even talk Ruben Niebla. What if Ruben Niebla, part of this is like, they're like, we can make JP Sears, Nestor Cortez, who was rocking a 3.77 before he got hurt. Maybe he's like, I know that I could do enough with these guys. And like you said, Randy Vasquez just pitched 4 innings, so.
Well, and like one final thought for me too, because I know we got to go, but like how many times have we said this already about the Padres, the Soto trade and in the deadline before and the deadline after? How are we ever going to have these prospects? This farm system will never return. And yet somehow we always have another great prospect in another 14 prospects to trade. And everyone goes, oh my goodness, there go all our prospects. We're never going to be able to do this again. And they do it again, and they do it again, and they do it again. It's a shout out to the incredible scout that he is and that his team is. And I think all anyone can ask for is to have their team be able to compete for a World Series. That's what he did.
Absolutely, man. And we're going to see again. I just like, it's never, we are never normal. The Padres have not been normal in like 10 years. But Jake, it's been a blast. Everybody go check him out on CBS 8 Sports San Diego, where he's going to be covering the team, interviewing AJ Preller and all the great Padres and covering the games and stuff. Be sure to go check out my superstar, handsome double king over on Twitter as well at Jake Garegnani. And you can follow me on Twitter /X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Feel free to send in your questions for Monday's mailbag episode. One of these weeks, I'm going to have you or Karthik, by the way, for the mailbag. That could be a lot of fun. But
I'll go off, baby.
I know you will. I believe you. But until next time, everybody, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies. Take care.